Well, the return of these ISIS-linked women and children is something that, in my view, should never have happened. We've certainly discussed it at length over the last week or so, and I know many of you agree with me. But now we're being told that these people who went to Syria to live with terrorists have been getting the VIP treatment here in Australia. There are calls for the state government, along with their federal counterparts, to disclose just how much money is being spent on this cohort. It comes after we learned during the weekend that the group of 4 women and their children who landed in Sydney last week were provided a taxpayer-funded pizza dinner. Anthony Roberts, Shadow Minister for Police and Counter-Terrorism. I've got him on the line right now. Anthony, good morning to you.
Very good morning, Mark.
Have you been asking the same questions that I have, and have you been able to get any answers?
Well, I'm a former counter-terrorism minister in the previous government, and can I tell you the cost of these returning individuals who travelled overseas to effectively fight against our nation and Western society, the cost does not stop at pizzas. The cost goes to public housing placement, priority housing status they'll get, special benefit payments, intensive social work and rehabilitation programs they'll be given, in state-funded counselling and family services, additional education, child protection, family support services, and for some of these individuals, we'll have to monitor them for life. Our security services will be monitoring them for life.
I know, Anthony, you're in state politics in New South Wales, but do you buy this line being run by the federal government that they have played no part in the repatriation of these women?
No, I don't buy that in the least. In fact, I was talking to a contact of mine who's got extensive experience at a federal level in counter-terrorism, and the question that needs to be asked, who authorised the individual to take those passports overseas? You know, and I know, and your listeners know, that in order to get a passport, it requires a lengthy process, and then you get your passport via registered mail, and you've got to go in and identify yourself. Somebody in Canberra authorised an individual to collect those passports and take them overseas on behalf of these, those individuals overseas. And we need to ask, who authorised that? It needed a signature, and that signature would have been very, very senior in the government. And I think they've got to come clean. I think both the state government and the federal government have to come clean to taxpayers as to what is the cost and the ongoing cost, because this is not going to be a one-off cost. This is a cost that will be with us and we'll be bearing for decades to come.
I couldn't agree more, and it's a good point you've made. The other thing that doesn't sit well with me, Anthony, and I'm sure you've done a bit of travel, you go overseas, you come back, you walk through immigration, you walk through customs, you then walk out into the arrivals hall. Why were these women and children ushered through the loading dock into government cars and to a hotel? I mean, surely there's some questions around that as well.
Well, they certainly got a better welcome than Ben Roberts-Smith, but the welcome that they got is a welcome reserved usually for rock stars or foreign dignitaries.
So who's responsible for this? Is this the New South Wales government or the feds that are in charge of this?
No, there'll be a whole of government approach. It'll be coordinated effectively by the federal government with assistance from the state government. And the state government, again, will be providing many of those services, those wraparound services, particularly around housing and the intensive social work and rehabilitation that'll be have to be undertaken, quite frankly, with these individuals and their children.
The one thing that I just can't wrap my head around, Anthony, is that, and people are into me this morning saying, oh, Mark, who cares, it's just pizzas. But that defeats the point, right? So we here at the moment are talking, and I hear from listeners in Western Sydney who are really, really struggling, families that can't afford to put food on the table. How do you think they feel, Anthony, when their taxpayer dollars are being spent to house these terrorist sympathisers and buy them pizza dinners? Do you understand what I mean?
Oh, I totally understand, and this is the frustration I think your listeners, together with myself, feel, and that is we have people on a housing wait list for years upon years upon years. And if these individuals who've travelled overseas into this conflict zone, fighting against our troops and the troops of the Western nations, if they're going to be given priority housing, I think questions need to be asked there. And again, cost of living, where people are struggling. Why should these individuals be given priority housing, being given priority benefits, wraparound services that many people can only dream about?
Well, you're the alternative government in New South Wales. How would you handle it, Anthony, if you're in charge?
Well, I wouldn't. I basically would have put pressure on the federal government not to have these individuals returned. Quite frankly, this is my opinion, that they should never have been allowed to come back.
Well, the common line that's sort of comes my way is, oh, well, they're Australian citizens. What I don't understand, Anthony, is if they're Australian citizens, my view is that once you turn your back on a Western democracy like ours, you forfeit the right to your Australian citizenship. And I know that we can't leave people stateless, but if they want to go and live in Syria, that's Syria's problem. They can become citizens of Syria and live under ISIS, even though it's fallen apart. Surely there needs to be something done at a federal level when it comes to our constitution. Would you agree?
Well, I totally agree, and specifically, this government needs to answer, the federal government needs to answer who signed off on those travel documents, because somebody did for those travel documents to be taken by a third party to be delivered overseas. So somewhere, somehow, someone's not telling the truth.
I understand how politics work, and I need to, in fairness, ask you. 2022, during the Perrottet government, 4 women, 13 children were repatriated from Syria, resettled in Western Sydney. Did the Perrottet government provide for or pay for their overnight stay when they arrived into the country? In your understanding, you were I think Paul Till was the police minister at the time in the Perrottet government, but I'm sure you were across the details.
Yes, I have no doubt that at that time the state government would have contributed towards the cost of those individuals and the services that would have had to have been provided for those individuals. I'm not saying that was right, but what I'm saying is that we need to have a very close look at exactly what we find as a society and as a nation acceptable when you have individuals travelling overseas to fight against Western democracies and allegedly be potentially involved with slavery and worse. Why should they have additional rights than other people?
All right, on to other things. What do you make of this polling out today in relation to One Nation? Are you concerned on Macquarie Street, given that this is going to impact you guys at the state election next year?
Look, I think the important piece here for all members of Parliament is that they need to listen to what the people, in my case, New South Wales, in my electorate, what their issues and their concerns are. And, you can't, on one hand, for example, as we have Labor continually attacking One Nation, well, there's a lot of people that are saying that they want to change their vote to One Nation, both Labor and Liberal supporters from the past. And people have significant issues that I think need to be addressed. You just can't turn your back on people and say these issues are not important. People are telling their elected representatives that there are issues around cost of living, there's issues around government services, and I know as a former planning minister that when we plan for communities into the future, it was always based on population growth. And we used to plan decades ahead. But when you have a federal government that keeps switching the population increase from overseas, it means that the hospitals we planned for, the emergency departments are going to be full, the schools we planned for are going to be full, the police service, for example, per capita, we're going to have less police on the beat, because you have a population that has been increased, not based on the projections that we were given.
All right, one last one. Tim Wilson's caused a bit of a stir this morning, suggesting that, Tony Abbott, his new role as the federal president of the Liberal Party is just an administrative role, and that the future of the party is in the hands of the parliamentary party. Tony Abbott was on the ABC. He hit back and said, well, I don't think there's ever been a party president who's taken a vow of silence, and I'm certainly not going to start. Do you welcome the appointment of Tony Abbott as the federal president of the Liberal Party?
Oh, I just don't welcome it. I celebrate it. I think Tony brings a great amount of depth and experience and skill. Tony understands what the people of New South Wales, in my case, but also Australia, need and what they're looking for, and he'll provide that leadership from an organisational point of view. And my suggestion to parliamentarians is you listen to the organisation, because they're the ones that put you there.
I would have thought being a former leader of the party and a former Prime Minister also makes it more than just an administrative role, according to Tim Wilson. I would have thought he has a very important role to play in the rebuild of the Liberal Party. You agree?
Well, look, totally. And certainly I think, and I think many of the listeners would certainly agree with me, and that is we can only wish that Tony was still Prime Minister.
All right, mate. Good to catch up. We'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot.
That's Anthony Roberts, Shadow Minister for Police and Counter-Terrorism, joining us here on the 2GB Morning Show. Just before I get to a break, all ordinaries down 13.4, 0.15% to 8,951.6. The dollar by 71.83 US cents. So there you are. I think there's some questions that need to be answered by both the feds and the state government here in New South Wales. And I had to take you back to 2022. I mean, it's all well and good for the opposition of the day to come out and criticise the government, but, 2022, the Perrottet government, 4 women, 13 children, repatriated from Syria, resettled in Western Sydney. So they would have paid for the overnight stay when they arrived into the country. So I just think, again, it's all well and good for us to be critical of what's happening, but we need to ensure that this doesn't happen again. If they've arrived here and they're going to be resettled here and they need to undergo these de-radicalisation programs, whether they work or not, I don't know. I doubt it. But I just think that surely there needs to be a line in the sand when it comes to those people who turn their backs on Australia to go and live under a terror regime. Can have you say this morning on 131873. We better take a break. We'll come back with more at 27 minutes away from midday. Yeah, nice to have you with us. 131873, the number to call. I just saw a text message there about, here it is, Mark, just reading that Anthony Albanese has received a pay rise of $57,000. What a kick in the guts for Australians doing it tough because of this government, from the Daily Telegraph. Well, I've just had a look online, and you're right, Remy Varga and John Rolfe are reporting that Anthony Albanese has pocketed a pay rise of $57,000, and the number of public servants has ballooned by 26% since he became Prime Minister 4 years ago. While the Labor MP is living it up in his 2 taxpayer-funded mansions, there's been a huge hit to households with electricity prices soaring to $2,000 a year, mortgage repayments jumping more than 40%, and a case of beer costing $10 more than 2022. The cost of living crunch has come as the Canberra bubble expanded, with the number of political staffers in the Prime Minister's office increasing by 16%. The median price of a house has increased 27%. Meanwhile, the average home loan has risen by 22%. Yet here we are with Anthony Albanese getting a $57,000 pay rise. I don't think I need to say anything off the back of that, do I?